Hi, I'm Burke MacDonald with Schaumburg Heartbeat. We're over at the Spring Valley Nature Center in their interpretive building. I'm with Dave Brooks, who is the manager of the facility, and Matt McBrien, who has the privilege of going outside in both the cold weather and the hot weather. He's the manager of the conservation part of this facility. Is that correct? Did I get your title for it?
Project coordinator, yes.
Okay, well, that's good. Dave, can you just give us a little bit of an overview of what the mission of Spring Valley is for the Park District?
Sure. Well, Spring Valley, our mission here is to help people gain an appreciation for and establish kind of a connection to the landscape, to the natural world. And we do that in a variety of ways through all the programming we do here, special events, the school field trips. But one of the other ways that we do that, in my mind, it's one of the more effective ways and long-lasting, is invite the community to come out and participate in the activities needed to help to nurture the landscape out here. So volunteers, we have over 200 volunteers.
Yeah, I was going to say, Matt, you use volunteers quite a bit. You have a staff that's here every day, right? But you use volunteers almost daily for different activities. What are some of the activities the volunteers do?
Well, I mean, on a daily basis, we do odds and ends like grounds maintenance and of the facilities and stuff like that. But we'll also use them as we're doing clearing projects through the winter time in prairie restoration areas that we want to continue expanding some of our prairies in.
And the public sees a lot of the volunteers when they come to the events over here. But there's a lot of behind-the-scenes work that those volunteers are doing that really nobody sees, but you couldn't operate without them, right?
Oh, absolutely not. I mean, they're a huge part of what we do.
Okay. Back a few falls ago, I came over here, and you have a work day in the fall where you go out, and what do? You collect seeds out there, right?
Yeah, that's our National Public Lands Day. We open that up to pretty much everybody that's willing to come out. And what we do is it's our big harvest of the year for our native prairie seeds. Okay,
we had a family that came out, and there's this little young gentleman, and it's amazing. He talks about collecting the seeds off the Indian prairie grass. Let's take a second to listen to him here.
I'm helping Spring Valley stay spring, and so it won't go all bad.
Okay.
And I'm getting the Indian grass. See, this is what they look like.
He's really enthusiastic, isn't he?
Yes,
I mean, he and his mom and the rest of the kids in the family look like they're having a great time.
Yeah, we get young and old out here, and they're always excited to be out on a beautiful day and wandering through the prairie.
Now, we showed him, he's collecting the Indian prairie grass. It's pretty much just a stripping process, but what else? They're out there, I know some of them are cutting, aren't they? They're cutting off seeds, and what are some of the other things that they're doing out there?
Yeah, there's, depending on the type of plant, I mean, it could be as simple as, like you said, stripping the seeds off of them, but some of them have stiffer stems, so we're removing the seed head with a pair of clippers and then just placing them in bags for them to be prepared later.
Okay, and they each get their own bag, so you try to keep the seeds separated at this point?
Right. Typically, we kind of set different groups out to go after specific species, so that way we're not mixing species in the same bag.
Okay, and is that the main activity that goes on here in the fall?
Yeah, that's our main activity as far as for National Public Lands Day. That's the main goal, is to get as many people out here as we can to help us collect that seed.
Nope. Now, obviously, you collect all that seed. We move into the winter season. What are the volunteers doing in the winter with those seeds to prepare them for what they're going to be used for?
Yeah, the next step in the process for that is really to break down the seed into just the pure seed, which requires basically removing the hulls or the chaff that is surrounding the seed, so then we could further process it from there as well.
We see them collecting in the fall, and they're showing how the butterfly milkweed just flies off, right? That's the one that's the cotton, right? Mm-hmm. But also what you do with it here is you take it and try to get all that chaff off. One of our volunteers is Lynn Eikenberry.
Basically, she's removing that fibrous part of the plant from the seed, so that way we could just break it down and just to that seed.
Okay. And then with some of the other seeds, maybe Dave, you can talk a little bit about this. You have to not just break them up, you have to really sort of fine tune them. You're not washing them. It may look like you're washing them, but you're using some sort of a screening device that it's falling into a bucket, and what's that doing?
Well, it's basically, it serves the function almost like a sieve. Basically, like Matt said, we want to separate the chaff and the stems and everything from the seed itself. So the seed is what's allowed mainly to fall down through the screen. So at the end of that process that you saw Lynn involved with, we have a container of pretty much mostly prairie seed of one type or another that then we can bag that up and do any further preparation before actually planting that, whether in the greenhouse or out on the grounds here. So.
Okay. We're going to back up to the fall again here a little bit and talk to Dennis. Dennis was out in the field collecting, and I think you can see the excitement in his voice of what you're going to be doing with it next. Let's listen to Dennis for a second here.
This is called purple prairie clover, and it grows primarily in kind of like a mesic prairie, which is kind of upland. And you can see the leaves are they legume?
Yes.
They are legumes, so they're kind of like a bean-like plant, and they're very rich in nitrogen.
Now, what are you doing? Are you just taking them and putting them in your bag, or are you stripping them?
I'm actually stripping them and putting them in the bag, and we're going to take them back to a hoop house in the back here by the maintenance conservation shop, and we're basically going to be collecting these seeds in anticipation of cleaning them and planting them, broadcasting seeds next spring. Now, we usually like to mix these in with other seeds, so we do a particular kind of prairie mix to fit the area. So when we add these on, these are good for this particular plant provides nitrogen for prairie soils, and nitrogen is really good fixers for providing nutrients for these other prairie plants to help them grow. So we don't have to add any fertilizers or chemicals to the soils here. Just by using particular kinds of plants with their root systems, they can actually generate all the chemical fixes that these plants need.
Okay, you could see there in Dennis, he gets all excited when he's talking out there, and he looks like he's really enjoying it, even though he's part of the paid staff. He's having a great time out there.
Sure.
But he talks about coming up with a combination. You collect 5, 6, 7 different types of seeds when you're collecting, right? And do you put them together as one mix, or what are you trying to do? He talks about it becoming its own fertilizer.
Well, we actually collect a lot more than just 5. There's probably like 70 species of plant. So there's quite a variety of plant species that we collect seed from. And I think what Dennis is referring to is that there are certain plants that are normally found together growing on the prairie. So if we know that we're going to be trying to restore or replant a particular area with dry soils, wet soils, etc., that we'll put together a blend of species of seeds from those species that would be appropriate for that area. You know, there are some of these seeds that actually kind of create their own nutrients in the soil. A lot of the prairie mixes do contain a legume, which is of course like a pear in the pear bean family. They are able to fix nitrogen. So once those plants get established in these seed mixes in these new prairies, then they're able to actually enrich the soil that way. So,
can you tell us a little bit about why you separate them out and clean? You want pure seeds, and the other stuff really it becomes a nuisance to the plants, or just the way that you do it here?
Well, really, for our purposes, you know, kind of the next step in the process is we go through our stratification, but also once we sow the seed, it's a pure seed that we can broadcast into trays. When we're using it as a prairie mix, as Dave mentioned, it's really not that important anymore that we remove all that chaff, but it's more important for when we're in the greenhouse and using it and starting new plants there.
Okay, let's talk about the greenhouse, because we did come out and visited you in the greenhouse, And they showed, and we'll show it as we're going along here, they take a certain combination of, you get some commercial mixture to put in there as a bedding, right?
Yeah, we use basically, it's a mix of soil and sphagnum, and it's just a mix that helps keep the soil moist when the seeds are in there.
And then you plant a mixture of the seeds, or do you try to keep them separated?
No, we keep them separate, because once we get them to germinate, then we start transferring them over into smaller cells, individual cells that kind of create its own root system and a plug in itself that we could then transplant out into the field.
And when would you go through the transplant process? Probably in the spring or in the summer, or it depends on what the plant is?
It depends on the plant and the root structure in there. Usually it could take anywhere from 2 to 3 months, maybe even longer, like I said, depending on the plant.
Okay. Now, and some of them you have to put in not a freezer, you have a refrigerator back there, right? Some of them that they have to go through the cold process as part of the...
Yeah, that's part of the process of getting them to germinate, what is called stratification, and that's basically mimicking what that particular plant or that seed would go through in nature.
And then the other thing, you have a watering system out there, and you try to water it appropriately, and I know you have a layered system out there depending on how much light they get. Is that correct?
Yeah, typically our prairie plants will stay at the top level of our bench system, and then our more shade-tolerant plants or woodland plants would be in the lower part. But our watering system is basically set up just specifically for seed germination. Once it germinates, then we're basically hand watering from there.
Okay. And then the other part of it, it's the ones where you put into a mix, you take them out. I know the day that we came out, there happened to be snow on the ground. And we're going to talk about that a little bit. Let's go out. There's another Matt here. And Matt went out with us into the snow and scattered some seeds. Let's hear what he says about that. So now you're going to spread the seed. Is this usually, we got quite a bit of snow this year. Is this typical, or do you usually try to do it when there's less snow?
We usually try to do it when there's less snow. Broadcasting seed we usually do directly after we clean the seed. We broadcast seed for many reasons: to jumpstart established areas like this, to get more species going. We use it a lot in new prairie and also in degraded areas to get the seed going naturally in the field. So typically we don't like this much snow, but we are supposed to get about 1 inch tonight, so that'll help keep the seed in place. The snow does great if we get it down before, the seed down before, that is, because it holds the seed where we want it, it stratifies naturally out in the field, and it also keeps the birds and mice away from the seed so they don't eat it. So. Okay,
Matt was showing us how they're doing that during the winter, where it'll be pulled into the snow helps pull it into the ground. But you don't always do that in the winter where you scatter them, right?
Yeah, actually we do that pretty much every winter. When we have a surplus of seeds and when we're working on sections of prairie that we want to enhance, our main goal is to get that seed down just before snowfall. That way it's covered up and safe from the birds, but it also starts working itself into the soil through the freeze-thaw cycle in the wintertime, and it's basically going through that stratification process in nature. Okay, so again, the moisture coming from the snow and the cold out there, that's all reacting to the germination of those plants. That's correct.
Swing into spring with all the best bunny events at the Schaumburg Park District. Bring the whole crew and a dozen hard-boiled eggs for family egg decorating night. While the eggs dry, enjoy a flashlight egg hunt. Come join us and don't forget your eggs and flashlight. Next, head to our annual Bunny Bash at the Community Rec Center. We'll have more egg hunts, games, crafts, train rides, pony rides, a petting zoo, and you can get your picture taken with Bunny too. Then join Bunny for a swim at the waterworks. We'll have pool egg hunts, entertainment, and games and prizes. Children must be accompanied by an adult at all times. Egg hunts will be scheduled per age group throughout the evening. Don't forget a bathing suit and a basket to collect eggs. For more information, go to parkfun.com. The Schaumburg Park District. Our bunny events are the best.
Sugarbush Fair, one of Spring Valley's most popular events. Our big late winter spring event, our pancake breakfast. There's lots of folks here. It's going to be busy all morning. Lots of folks coming for the pancakes and to learn about maple syrup. It's a beautiful day. There's lots to see here and there's lots to eat. So let's go take a look and see what's going on out at Sugarbush Fair.
Okay, we're coming into the springtime, and the springtime at Spring Valley, one of the greatest events. I've been to a couple of them, and I know the public enjoys it, those that have showed up, and I would encourage you to do that, is in the springtime, you guys burn some of the prairie. And why do you do that? Obviously, you enjoy having the public come and see it, but what's the purpose of this?
Well, it does have a very valuable purpose in terms of management of the prairie. The prairies, a lot of the landscapes in the Midwest were historically burned on a regular basis, both naturally and also man-made for thousands of years. So the prairie is basically, it's a fire-dependent landscape. It does require periodic fire to maintain the plant community and to keep out woody plants and to help some of the seeds germinate, et cetera. So we're trying to mimic that process that occurred naturally for thousands of years.
Now what would have triggered them originally? Lightning and so on?
It would have been lightning. There's a lot of historical evidence that has discovered that actually the Native Americans did a lot of the burning intentionally as well. So it would have been a combination of natural factors as well as man-made.
So they figured out a way that they found out that if they burned their homelands and their grounds that they use for feeding and so on, that really they ended up having more food and more crops available to
Yeah,
them.
and I think the main reason for their burning was that it encouraged the populations of animals that they hunted for food and clothing and things like that. The bison, the elk, animals like that. Because when these prairies are burned, because they're perennial plants, they have extensive root systems that protect them from fire during the dormant season when the plants aren't growing. So the plants come back more lush and rich than prior to the fire. And those lush, rich plants then bring in the grazing animals that the Native Americans would hunt. So.
Now we do, and we're not going to get into this as much because we don't have much background on it, but there is a certain amount of animal life out there. You have foxes and coyotes, I think, and deer. Are there other animals? And do you find that does help with the ecology out here?
It definitely helps with the ecology, not just for the plants. You know, they're the primary beneficiary, but of course the animals are all part of the ecosystem out there, so they benefit as well through the additional growth and richness of the plant community. And while we don't have any bison out here that we're trying to hunt, all the other smaller animals benefit as well. There's a lot of rodents, a little mouse type creature called the meadow vole, and they're extremely abundant out there, and they benefit from the fires just because of all the additional plant growth and seeds and things like that. So, but also insects. Because we have a lot of butterflies and bees and pollinators out there. So once these prairies come back from the burn, they just create this very rich habitat for all the animal life that exists out there. So.
Okay, Matt, let's talk a little bit about, we're coming back, we hopefully we've seen the fire out there, and it's really, the day after you come back over here, it's really a black landscape. But within a week, you start seeing green out there. It's amazing. As we can see, I've tried to come out here almost weekly after that burn to get a feel for what it's like. But it's amazing how soon the green starts backing up. And do they come back in certain order, or is it just, what happens out there at that point?
Yeah, I mean, really not a certain order that I've noticed in any sense, but Yeah, I mean, depending on the moisture that we get during the spring, yeah, I mean, our prairies are starting to green up within a week or two of burning over them.
And they start and they grow a foot and then so on. And by the end of the summer, you're walking down those paths and the grasses are up again to as high as you are, right?
Exactly, and you know, from year to year, people would, you know, you wouldn't know coming out here in August, you wouldn't know that we had burned just a few months earlier and completely eliminated all the thatch that was on the ground.
Now, do you burn the same areas every year, or do you try to move it around that one year you'll burn one certain area and then another year you'll burn another area?
Really, it's dependent on need for us. We try and do a rotation for some of our older prairies that are more established, but as we continue to add newer prairies on the property, we target those almost on a yearly basis because they're more likely going to have the weedy species in there that the fire is going to help manage and knock those back.
And for the public that's interested, the one that's done for the public is usually done in what, April, May?
Yeah, it's done in April.
In April. Okay. Okay, we have a poster here that I believe the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources put out. It's a beautiful poster. This fascinates me every time I see it. And it shows you visually the root system, and that's what you're trying to do out here, right? If you look on the far left of this poster, that's our regular grass, right, that grows in our homes right around here in Schaumburg?
Yeah, that's a typical turf grass, which has very, very shallow roots, which is why, turf grass is mostly cool season grasses, so that's why our lawns grow so much in spring and fall, but during the summer, if it's dry and hot, they can tend to turn brown, and you do have to water them quite a bit to keep them green.
Okay.
So.
But these other plants, and a lot of these, some of these are actually over here at Spring Valley, and some are in other places in the Midwest. You notice that they go fairly deep, and you notice that the tops of them, some of them go up quite high. I think the Indian grass that we were talking about earlier, that's the one that gets over our head, right, in the fall? Yeah,
that and big blue stem, that's our state grass here in Illinois, and that one gets quite tall. You know, it can be in a wet year over 8 feet tall. I've seen it. So.
And then how deep are those roots that we're seeing here?
The root systems of these prairie plants go down usually at least as far as the plant is tall. So in the case of big blue stem, you're talking about a root system that'll go down about 8 to 10 feet or so. In some cases, some of these wildflowers, like compass plant, have a taproot that will go down 10 or 15 feet or more. And of course, they do that as a survival mechanism on the prairie because it allows them to get down there to water in the subsoils. And that's one of the characteristics that makes them very drought tolerant.
The building we're in here right now, and I think we shot this when we were at the greenhouse, you grow the grass that's up there, and that has a quite deep root system too, right?
Well, the grasses we have up on the roof here, they are native grasses. We tend to focus up there on some of the shorter grasses that you would find up on like hill prairies, things like side oats, grama, little blue stem, and that. They can also have deep root systems. Now, up on the roof here, they would not. There's not as much soil there, so they're not able to put that down.
I notice on this poster that we have here, the far end. I don't know. Do we have buffalo grass? I think it says it's buffalo grass. Do we have buffalo grass out there?
It really wasn't part of our Midwestern prairies here. It's a grass of the high plains, so out in Colorado, Wyoming, places like that.
But I notice that that's a fairly short, on top it's fairly short, but that goes down very deep, and I'm assuming that's because the animals, that's probably why it's named that way, is the animals are grazing on it, so they want it, they have to keep coming back to feed the animals, and take a lot of wear and tear, but they go down deep so it keeps on going, right?
Well, one of the unique adaptations of grasses in particular is that they're designed to be grazed, and so they can, because they really grow from the ground up, whereas a lot of other plants, if you bite the top off of them, and you've kind of slowed down growth quite a bit, whereas grasses, in some cases, the more they're grazed, the faster they grow. In case of buffalo grass and a lot of the other native grasses, the depth of the root system is more related, again, to that drought tolerance that we talked about. They just have that root system, and that's kind of their reserve of energy. I like to almost think about it as like their bank account. They can always draw upon that reserve to continue to grow even during the hottest, driest weather. So,
okay, I guess, Matt, I'll let you get the last word in here, and that is, you have seasons out here where it's dry and everybody's complaining it's really hot and we're getting no rain and what are we going to do? Our grasses are drying out. And then there's other seasons where we go by and we're getting lots of rain and we say, you know, I wish the rain had stopped so we could go do some activities. Do you change what you do out there depending on what the weather's like for the summers?
No, we really don't change any of our practices out there in the prairie. I mean, there will be a little bit of difference between a wet year and a dry year in our prairie. Sometimes you don't see as much flowering in the plants. Sometimes you see less seed production. But from year to year, they return just as strong.
So you basically, it's not completely maintenance free out there because we have the volunteers that help and locate areas that need a little assistance. But pretty much the prairie that you see out here that you're coming and walking through is pretty self-sustaining.
Yeah, pretty much self-sustaining, yes. I mean, we do work on some of the pest management issues out there that we have with various invasive plants that are non-native to the area. So in that case, we do some maintenance on those, but aside from that, yeah, they're self-sustaining.
Well, this has been a very fascinating segment that I hope that you've got to learn something about Spring Valley. It's a hidden gem in Schaumburg. I encourage you and your family to come out during all the seasons. The paths are open all year round. You got to be careful if you're out here in the winter because it can get to be a little icy. And in the summer, obviously, you need to probably bring a water bottle or something along to keep yourself hydrated. But I think if you come out here on a weekly or monthly basis, you're going to be really fascinated about what the prairie was like as the generations ago that had to deal with this day in and day out, year in and year out. This is Burke MacDonald with Schaumburg Heartbeat. Hope to see you again soon.